Um, a few months back, I did a video on the JonBenet Ramsey case on the ransom note and why I thought it could be written by an intruder and how to interpret that. A few days later, the CBS documentary came out and they contradicted everything I said. So I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I need to take this down. This is ridiculous. These people solved the case, and who am I to argue with them? So eventually I did not take the video down, and the reason for that was because I thought there were the CBS documentary was a little bit off, and public opinion seems to be swayed. Everyone seems to agree that Burke did it, and I don't think this documentary proved it at all. Um, I do highly respect the team of experts they hired. I like Jim Clemente and Candice DeLong. I think they're wonderful. I think they're great at what they do. But yeah, I just didn't feel like this documentary was portraying the case as it should have been portrayed. So I really wanted to express a little bit of critique. And no disrespect, it's just my view on things. And I hope that maybe people will understand why I do not agree after this little video. So, here we go. So they had a really nice build up to the documentary. They just had a really nice intro, and then we got taken on a journey that essentially they like confabulated the theory in the first few minutes by speaking to the 911 operator, and then they just went on a witch hunt for Burke. At least I felt that it was like that. And yeah, so point one is the 911 operator, where they started. I don't know why they even like gave her so much credit. She could have been a side note, but instead of that, they almost made it feel like the case hinged on her testimony. Like, oh, I was never heard by a jury, and that's really weird because I could have swayed the jury's opinion. And I mean, she was a an influenced witness, and she has been on this case. She has been hearing about this case for almost 20 years. So I mean, a more influenced witness than that, I don't think you can get, because she probably already made up her mind in the past 20 years. So I don't know why they put so much emphasis on her. I know that anyone will tell you that a witness is just a very biased and uncredible and unstable source for your information, and you can only well keep it to support your theory, but not to like build your theory on, or take it as a point of start. And that's what they did. They were like, well, how did she make you feel, and how did the call make you feel? And she was like, yeah, well, it felt so off. And I was like, well, this is just your intuition. That's not a credible source of information. That doesn't really tell me anything. So yeah, I thought the 911 operator was like a good touch to the documentary, but the weight they put on her testimony was way too much. So that's where I already got a little bit like, okay, maybe I don't know what they're trying to say. So that was the 911 operator. They essentially established that the 911 call was weird, so they wanted to dive deeper into it. So what they did was they went to enhance the tape with the new modern technologies that would like clarify what was being said after Betsy thought she hung up. So what they did, or at least what it felt like to me, was like I was watching an episode of Ghost Hunters, and they were trying to clear up an EVP, and I was like, what? What? How is this? How is this supposed to be scientific and real? They were just saying like, well, can you hear it? And they played a million times the tape. They played it a million times, and we're like, can you hear what they're saying? I think they're saying, we're not talking to you. And I was like, yeah, well, if you told me they were saying I play the piano a lot, I probably would have heard that because it was so unintelligible. And they were just planting an idea in my head that that was being said. There was no proof whatsoever that that was actually what was being said. And they were just like, well, this seems plausible and it fits with our theory, so we're just gonna go with it. And I don't think that was right to do, the right thing to do. I think they should have looked more into the tape enhancement. So yeah, or I don't think they could have drawn a conclusion from the tape enhancement, but that's what they did, and I thought that was, well, not right, not in this investigation that was supposedly to be objective. So yeah, what they then did was they did a behavioral analysis on the tape, on the tape, I guess, on the call, and they were like, well, if your child is kidnapped, then you wouldn't hang up if you place a 911 call. You would like keep it as your lifeline. That's your call to the police, and that's you don't hang up on that. So I I don't know. There was also a bit intuition. I mean, that's maybe logical to infer that people would do that, but it's not written in stone. It's not like, well, that indicates their guilt, because in another interview, I heard Patsy say that she read the letter and they were kind of doubting what they would do with it, if they should call the police, because the letter said they were under scrutiny, and that calling the police would result in their daughter being beheaded or whatever statements they made in that letter. So she was a little bit ambivalent about if she should call the police or shouldn't, and in the end she felt she had no choice, so that's why they did call in eventually. But I can see how she maybe was still scared and still felt that it was not entirely the right choice, so that's why she maybe hung up a little bit faster. I don't know, I could come up with some explanations for why she might have done that, but they literally just never brought up that there might be some other explanation for why she hung up, other than that it was weird to them that she did that, and that it was also an indication of guilt. So I really was like, why are you being so one-sided with your behavioral analysis? Because I think you should keep the whole situation into consideration if you do that, and you should also discredit why she might not do it or why she might do it. And they didn't. They were just like, well, it's weird. Yes, sure, it's weird, but I mean, I can also come up with explanations of why she did it, and then it's not that weird. I have some critique on the analysis they did on the ransom note. Well, I did the analysis too, and mine was obviously a lot less um, well constructed than this one, but that still doesn't mean that I totally agree with it. I felt ridiculous for what I said because it totally contradicted what they said, and I do feel that they might be right. But although I can't personally argue with what they said, other experts can, and I know that this ransom note has been examined like a gazillion times, and it has been matched exactly one time to Patsy. So I mean, statistically, I don't think that says anything that one expert can match it to her. I had this letter in my forensic linguistics class, and I had to read about it. And I know some very well-respected forensic linguistics that did not match it conclusively to either John or Patsy. So, I mean, there's so many different opinions out there about this ransom note. I don't know why we should take this guy's examination to be true or to uphold as the truth, because I don't think I think if you got someone else, you would have got a different opinion. And I think they should have definitely put that in there and not be like, well, here is another piece of evidence for our theory because this guy says that. I mean, that's just really one-sided, like, well, most of the documentary, and I thought that was also a wrong thing to do. So what they did next was, I mean, of course they are behavioral analysis, so obviously they're gonna analyze. They were analyzing the behavior of John and Patsy throughout the media and throughout the case unfolding and in interviews and that kind of stuff. Um, what they came up with was that they, in like every single piece that they mentioned, they were like, well, look how weird they are acting, and look how this doesn't fit with what we would expect to see from someone in this kind of situation. And that might be true. I mean, maybe they're right. Probably they are right. But I mean, I have read a lot of books about criminal profiling, and every single one starts with, you cannot apply behavioral analysis as an indication of guilt. You can use it to narrow a suspect pool, or maybe to establish interrogation techniques or stuff like that, or maybe indicate that you need to look a little bit further into someone, but not to be like, well, this looks like very guilty behavior. If that was the case, then we wouldn't even need trials or juries or anything, because we could just look at a person, let a behavioral analysis take a look at a person and say, well, this guy's guilty, and just lock him up. I mean, I don't know why they were so eager to indicate guilt that way, and especially since they did not show the other side. They did not show how Patsy and John would fit the profile of someone who would murder, or parents who would murder their child in a fit of rage and stage a crime. I mean, that they should fit that profile as well, not just the weird behavioral profile. I mean, yeah, sure, I can find probably weird behavior in anyone if I search for it, but do they also fit the other way around? So they were well on route with the theory that at least Ramsey had something to do with it. So, well, naturally, they needed more to support that theory. So what did they do? They sought a family friend who wanted to talk, and she was one of the few ones who wanted to talk, I gathered. And I don't know, this interview made Patsy seem like some kind of monster for her not wanting her friends to talk to the media or the police. And yeah, I don't know why they wanted to portray her that way. Why they really were like, yeah. So how did it make you feel that Patsy didn't want you to talk to the media? And I mean, what did you want to hear from this woman? I mean, she was eager to talk.
And, they just cut me off as a friend. They felt I betrayed them. You know, at the time, I didn't understand, but in hindsight, it's because I told it, you know, I didn't obey what all the other friends did.
How did you feel, though, when you saw them actually doing the opposite? They went on CNN.
I felt that they were hypocrites.
I mean, this woman was the same thing as the 911 operator. She was heavily influenced. She probably already made up her mind about the case. She probably her testimonies were already grafted into a forum that she had been holding on to for 20 years. I don't even know if I could put any credibility to her, other than that she was saying that Patsy was acting weird and it didn't feel right the way she treated her in the media. So yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I can kind of see why Patsy asked her friends not to do that. Because you really want to believe that if you're innocent, the truth will come out and nothing will happen to you. But the sad truth is that it doesn't always happen that way. I mean, you don't want to have like 20 versions of the truth floating around. And Patsy and John already knew they were being targeted by the police, and they were being pointed to as suspects. So, I mean, I would also advise anyone who is being suspected of a crime to get a lawyer, because you don't know how the system works and you need someone to guide you through it. It's not that you're guilty, it's just that you don't know. And also law enforcement makes mistakes, and also law enforcement might have bias to them, and you want to believe that's not true, but it is. So you need something to guard yourself, you need someone to guard yourself. And if you get like 20 different versions of the truth floating around, and yeah, I mean, that would even make the case more complicated and even more difficult to distill the truth. So I get why she maybe wasn't that eager to talk to the police or to the media. And when they did, it was really orchestrated, because they already knew that they were the prime suspects, and they already knew that they had to protect themselves. It was, I mean, I don't know if they're innocent or guilty, but if they're innocent, this is a travesty. This is dramatic. The way they were targeted, the way they kind of closed up the investigation to what they thought to be the truth. And I don't blame them for getting a lawyer. I mean, I would have done too, I think. I mean, I don't know much about the legal system, so I would want someone to help me guide through it. And if the police comes at you as you being guilty, then you're not gonna be all up in arms to jump to defend yourself, because you might say something to incriminate yourself while being innocent, because they can just take that and make your words seem like something else. I mean, it's not definitely, would definitely not be the first time that has happened. So yeah, I can kind of see why she did that. And then they took this piece of evidence with the woman to be like, Patsy was a monster for not wanting her friends to talk to the media, and she was just being bossy and having something to hide. So I don't know why this woman was there, other than to make Patsy look bad. They went the more scientific route and went on to examine the head wound. Hi, Dr. Henry Lee, if you see this, if you weren't that old and not already married, I would totally marry you. I love you. But so they established that the murder weapon could have been the flashlight that hasn't been claimed by anyone. Could have been, yeah, but also could not have been. I mean, it was not conclusive that this flashlight was the murder weapon. It fitted into your theory very well. Yeah, it definitely did, but it could have been any number of things, and I think they really did not relate to the general public that this was not the murder weapon. This was just a possibility that was fitting their theory, and I thought that was not right. I think they should have at least explained that something else could have caused this head wound. Then they went on to the order of the crime. So in this whole case, in this whole documentary, where I don't know, we're about an hour in now, they were applying logic to how people should have acted and what they should have done. So this is the very first time where I would actually apply logic in this case. Because what they said is JonBenét was struck over the head, and then she was brain dead and unconscious. But she was still alive. So what they inferred to be done next is that these people find their knocked out child, and they don't know that she can wake up anymore. They don't know that yet. So what they do next is they fashion a garrote and strangle this girl to death to make sure she's dead, and then they stage sex crime. I mean, how, if there's any logic applied to this case, then it's this point. I mean, no one does that. Everyone who sees their child unconscious would just take them to the hospital and say, hey, my child is knocked unconscious, maybe you should do something. But no, these people went with, let's finish her off just to make sure she's dead and then stage the crime, because otherwise they might think we murdered her or we hit her. That was such a weird thing. So, and also in the other documentary, they showed the little fingernail marks here around the ligature, I can't pronounce it, but, or what at least they thought were fingernail marks, and if that would be the case, if that indeed were fingernail marks, then this theory wouldn't fly at all. And I mean, they did not explain in the CBS documentary what those fingernail marks were and why they were there. So yeah, well, conveniently putting evidence to the side, what I would do, definitely. And they also asked a lot of times why, like, why were wrists bound and why was there a garrote which was not needed, and they were explaining it with it's staging. So I mean, I'm really not as well trained as them, but what I would say is that this could be signature. This could be part of the killer's fantasy. I mean, he could have had a fantasy of putting a garrote around it, making the garrote and strangling her that way. I mean, that would be a very simple explanation of the why. Also, why her hands were bound, which seemed to have no function, but it could have had the function of fulfilling a fantasy. That it could have very well be the reason why he did that. And yeah, those whys can be explained when it's an intruder, other than that it was staging. So yeah, those whys can be answered, in my opinion. Okay, so then they had to explain away the most difficult piece of evidence, and that's the foreign DNA found on JonBenet through the new Touch DNA technology. And they did not do a very good job at that. They were just like, hey, look how easy Touch DNA can be transferred, so it could be accidental. Could be. But this DNA was found on 2 separate pieces of clothing. I don't exactly know how that would go accidentally. Statistically, it seems to be very, very unlikely that happening. I mean, I guess it could happen, but it's not like, oh well, just scoot this whole DNA evidence to the side because it could have been Touch. It could have been the killers. How do you explain if it was the killers? You can't just put it up to the side because it could be accidental. Anything could be accidental. I mean, I could accidentally put DNA on the moon, but it's so unlikely. Why would I just explain that away? Yeah, so it was really weird that they just put that to the side as insignificant. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, the Touch DNA came from the factory. I don't think that's what they set out to do. They just took some garments from a factory in packaging to show how easily Touch DNA is transferred, even before anyone else has handled it but the factory workers. And yeah, it's true that it probably can be transferred really, really easily, but if it's on 2 separate pieces of clothing, and also what they do is they swap areas that are significant to the case, so as where you might touch pants to take them off and that kind of stuff, and that's what they did. So that's where the DNA was found. And yeah, I mean, it's not entirely honest to just say, well, it could have come from there, so let's just dismiss it, because it's I think it's quite an important piece of evidence. Next is the taser, because I also have something to say about the taser. I have something to say about everything. Anyway, then they did the taser experiment, and I saw the guy jump, and yeah, if that was the reaction, then probably people would have noticed. But I've also seen people react differently to tasers, where they did went out cold and couldn't move for quite some time. And especially since this was a little girl, she might have reacted differently. I think they used a taser that they thought could have made the marks. But anyway, I'm not sure that that's how everyone or every time the same reaction to a taser. So yeah, I'm not sure that everyone would jump. And also, if this guy took her downstairs and fed her a pineapple and then took her to the basement to assault her there and tasered her there, I don't even know what's the problem with her jumping from a taser. I mean, no one would have noticed if he did it in the basement. So yeah, I still can see how he could have tasered her. And I can also see that it might be the railroad tracks, but it did not disprove to me that this wasn't a taser. So CBS obviously had a lot of money to spend on this documentary because they rebuilt the entire house, which I was all for because it's a very good way to test your hypotheses. And yeah, it gave a very real feel, but it seemed a little bit expensive, I guess. But okay, well, let's not get into that. But what they said was, well, it's important to test every hypothesis, and then they went on to test one. So they said the intruder couldn't have come in through the basement window because there were still cobwebs intact. Well, I kind of am inclined to agree. I don't think the intruder would have been like that careful to leave cobwebs, so people would have thought that he wouldn't have come in that way, but well, leave a suitcase and an open window. I mean, yeah, okay. I can kind of see that he might have come in through that way, but I mean, there are other ways of entering a house. I mean, you don't have to break in. The Ramsey stated that they had a lot of doors. They had a lot of doors open during the day. Someone could have already snuck in and hid in the house. I haven't seen any counter theories to that. I have seen why that wasn't possible. I mean, this person maybe could have even had a key. I don't know. During an earlier time, there's so many things I could think of that could have been a means of entry. That just proving that he didn't come through the basement window doesn't mean he did not come into the house. I don't even know why they did not address any other ways of entry. So yeah, so far for testing every hypothesis, I guess. Okay, so what was left for them to do? Indicate Burke's guilt. So what did they do? Indicate Burke's guilt. They took the interview tapes from Burke, and they were just I don't know. They were so coming down so hard on this kid. I think Burke was maybe a little bit of a weird kid to begin with. So I don't know if they could have done a fair analysis without truly knowing him or of his problems or maybe behavioral problems he had. He was reportedly a very shy kid. I myself could see how I would not get up if my mom was panicked to check what was up, even though I was also a very curious kid. I mean, there are several things to explain his guilt from, and yeah, I mean, it was also possible that he didn't even grasp the fact that his sister was dead. I mean, at that age, I of course I knew what dying meant and what it was, but I didn't know what it exactly was as a concept, like what it means to be dead. I knew I knew it in theory, but I didn't know what it practically meant. So it could have been very well that he just didn't grasp the severity of the situation, and that is why he acted a little bit, well, strange or odd to say it like that. And I don't know how that suddenly becomes an indication of guilt, that he's acting weird, because yeah, you all of a sudden they want to apply logic and behavioral analysis, but they didn't want it to do it when I think it really mattered, like how the Ramseys fitted into the profile of murdering their child or covering up an accident happening to their child. They were, throughout the whole documentaries, they were being like, well, you have to test every theory and you have to just look at everything and objectively look at where the evidence takes you. I don't think they did that at all. I just think they confabulated the theory in the first 5 minutes, and then they just went on that route, and they had a field day with it. They cherry picked the facts. They left facts out where they thought it was convenient. They put facts and testimonies in where they felt that it would help their case. I don't feel that this was an honest documentary where honest facts were relayed and where we could see both sides of the story and explain how both sides would play into this evidence, because I can, on every single piece of evidence they presented, I can think of another way to interpret it. So yeah, I thought that was wrong, because they know they were putting this out to a big public who maybe does not review this kind of stuff as critically as I or maybe other people do. I've always been taught in my university to always be critical and always look at and think for yourself. So that's I at least try to show you guys another side to this documentary, and not readily accept that Burke did it, because this documentary at least didn't prove it. So in the end, they were just overselling it, like, oh, did we see the Ramseys protect their child with Burke, and how they treated and how they behave with Burke, and they were just overselling it at that point, and I thought that was kind of cheap. So for the last part, this is not about the documentary specifically, but it does have to do with Burke. The interview with Dr. Phil, people have said he behaved really weird. I mean, if anyone anyone could think of 10 reasons why this kid would act weird. His sister was murdered. His family's been under scrutiny for 20 years. They've been blamed for the murder. He has been blamed for the murder. He had to come over the traumatic fact that his sister was murdered in a house where he was also asleep. I mean, this kid couldn't really have turned out normal, in my opinion. I think he was always a little bit of a weird kid, so to say, but yeah, I mean, I don't even blame him for being uncomfortable in front of millions of people watching an interview. And yeah, I mean, it's weird. Yeah, we can say it's weird, but it needs no inference beyond that, beyond the fact that he's weird. There's no inference that he's guilty because he was acting weird. I mean, that's, imagine people going to jail for acting weird. Imagine you acting weird and being accused of a crime, and then they say, well, our intuition is that you did it and you're acting weird, so you should be locked up. No one wants that, right? You wouldn't want that. So yeah. And for the, I promise this is the last bit. The thing is, the parents can seem guilty very easily, because all you need for the parents to be guilty is a lack of evidence that someone else was involved, because the only other option then is that the parents were involved. And And yeah, they did a very good job in this documentary for explaining away any other evidence present. So yeah, they succeeded with that. But if we look very honestly at this case, we can conclude that there is not a lack of evidence. There is evidence that there were other people involved, that this weren't the Ramseys. There is no exclusion of an intruder. That they never one time excluded it during this documentary. Also, people have said, well, we should have found forced entry or fingerprints. Well, like I said, the forced entry, someone could have come in when doors were open and hid in the house. That's not an uncommon thing for people who prey on victims. So, I mean, if this person was really determined, he could have come in. I don't think that should have been there. That it could have been there, but it should not have been there. And as for fingerprints, yeah, I mean, there were so many people in this house. There were so many people in and out, not only during the crime taking place, but also in the days before they opened up their house for a Christmas visit. I mean, there would have been thousands and thousands and thousands of fingerprints, could have been matched to anyone. And this crime scene was disturbed. So a disturbed crime scene is not the same thing as a lack of evidence. The fact that they did not find the evidence or could not identify the evidence didn't mean it wasn't there. So yeah, I think that should be held into account. And I really, really hope that people will think twice before they say something. This case, I don't think it will be solved, to be honest. But I definitely think that yeah, we should not indicate someone's guilt based on these facts presented. And I really hope that I could maybe give you another point of view. And yeah, I mean, if you disagree, I totally welcome that. And if you have another opinion, please let me know, because I like to discuss the case and like to discuss what I said. But I hope I at least made you think about it. So yeah, goodbye everyone.